It's at Nerd on a Budget, and what the heck? Hey, what's up, everyone? My name is Danny, and you're watching Nerd on a Budget. So my friend recently asked me to help him put together a computer, and he had a budget that was more than what I typically do for my super low price budget builds. So I figured this would be an ideal opportunity to showcase a mid-range build. So let's check it out. So as I always do here on Nerd on a Budget, I'm going to gloss over all the components, where I got them, and provide proof of the pricing. All prices include shipping and taxes. The reason I do this on every video is because I want to be completely transparent about the thought process and price of each build I do. As always, feel free to ask questions on anything in my videos and I'll try my best to answer. So first up is the processor and motherboard. My friend had a larger budget than I typically do in my budget builds, and he plans to use this for both gaming and video editing. I went with the used Intel i7 2600K comboed with an MSI Z77 motherboard through Reddit Hardware Swap. It came out to $215. This will be plenty for gaming, and being an i7, the hyper-threading will be useful for video editing. The stock Intel heatsink was thrown into the combo as well, but this won't be needed since I was able to find a better cooler. This CPU was introduced in 2011 and may sound old by the 2000 series in its name, but don't let that mislead you. The 2600K is still really good by today's standard, and I found it provides a better used price to performance ratio than the newer chips. It'll also hold its value for a while, as most high-end Intel chips do. Should my friend want to upgrade his CPU and mobile in a year or two, he can still sell these and make back a good chunk of the cost. The next combo I bought was the RAM, CPU, cooler, solid-state drive, and hard drive. The RAM is 16GB of 1866MHz Fury HyperX in white. The CPU cooler is the Cooler Master Hyper Evo 212, one of the most popular air cooling solutions. The solid-state drive is a 240GB SanDisk SSD Plus and will hold the operating system and daily use programs to provide snappy boot up and load times. It will be accompanied by a 7200 RPM 1TB C8 drive for additional storage space without breaking the bank. The cost of the bundle was $125, and the pricing works out to be about $40 for the RAM, $20 for the cooler, $40 for the solid-state drive, and $25 for the hard drive. For the graphics card, I went with the Asus Strix GTX 970. This was from Craigslist, and I actually got two of them. I found a person selling a pair for $550, which works out to $275 per card, and I actually have a Craigslist ride-along for this transaction. This card is a huge step up compared to the GTX 960 and is a transition point in NVIDIA's 900 series from mid-range to high-end. For the power supply, I went with the brand new Senti 725 watt. I couldn't find anything in the 700 watt range for under $50 without rebate, and this one came out to $45 tax-free and free shipping through Amazon Prime. I think a lot of people get caught up with the brand loyalty and they don't consider newer brands trying to pave way into the market. Senti doesn't have the history that companies like EVGA, Seasonic, or Corsair has, but it can still get the job done. I've owned Senti power supplies before with no issues. They're slowly gaining momentum, and rightly so, for providing good power supplies for the price. The case is the Apivia X Hermes Green. This was $61 on Newegg out the door. My friend simply wanted a green case and thought this looked nice, so we went with it. The build process was pretty straightforward. The case was easy to work in and had nice features like quick release hard drive brackets and plenty of room behind the motherboard for cable management. The only problem I ran into was the Hyper Evo 212 being too tall and running into the side panel fan. This was a minor issue though, and in this case, it was the easy choice to keep the Hyper Evo 212 as it provides a bigger benefit in cooling the CPU, since the case still had plenty of other fans on the top, front, and back. I just took it off and gave it to him in case he ever opted for an all-in-one liquid cooler or something where he could put the side fan back on. For the OS, I've been using the same Windows 7 key that I've been using for all these builds. The process goes like this. First, I get Windows 7 installed on the machine. Then I throw on the minimal drivers to get the system online, and then navigate to the Windows 10 website so I can upgrade to Windows 10 as soon as possible. It's important to get Windows 7 onto the system first because you're upgrading from an existing OS and it won't ask you for a key in this case. It'll generate an internal one unique to the system. If you don't install Windows 7 first, you'll need a Windows 10 specific key if you upgrade. The way I'm doing this, the same Windows 7 key can be used again next time to repeat the process. If you don't have a Windows 7 key though, you can go unactivated in Windows 10 and still have almost full functionality, or grab a key over on Kingwin for dirt cheap if you can afford it in your budget. So for the benchmark, I originally tested both The Witcher 3 and Grand Theft Auto Online because they are the most demanding games I own. Unfortunately though, during the Witcher 3 test, the Reaver Tuner statistics weren't captured. It's really odd since the entire time I was monitoring it, and it was definitely on the screen, but I didn't find this out until after I gave my friend the computer, and I didn't want to take it back just to benchmark one game. But I do take notes during benchmarking, however, and I can say that I was getting an average of about 45 frames per second with all the settings maxed out. And then when I dialed down NVIDIA Hairworks, shadow quality, and ambient occlusion just by a notch, it gave me a stable 60 frames per second. and I honestly couldn't tell the difference aesthetically from when I turned those settings down, but it was definitely much smoother at 60 frames per second. So in the end, you're gonna have to be the judge on the balance between the settings and the performance. Alright, let's check out Grand Theft Auto. So I ran this with and without fraps at multiple settings, and having fraps on did not make a difference. So this is what's on by default, and it looks like, okay, 1080p, and all the densities maxed out, and textures. And some of these can still be changed to very high, so I'd say between high and very high. But alright, very high to high settings. We are getting 60 frames stable. And this is in the car too, which is usually where you get the worst frame drops. So let's see. I'll just go for a little bit longer. Alright, let's try it on foot now. Okay. I love just jumping out of cars after like going off of a ramp or something. Okay, yeah, 60 frames per second. So we're kind of maxing out the game right now. So let's turn up the settings. Multi-sampling, anti-alias, maxed. Okay. So very high. See, some of these go to ultra, so you just gotta check each of them individually. Like ultra, okay. So we will apply these changes and it will lose connection, but we'll be right back. Alright, and we are back. So let's make sure the settings stayed after that. Okay, we got max, MSAA, very high, and everything, and ultra on whatever allows it. Alright, so yeah, everything is maxed out. So let's take let's take a motorcycle. Alright. Alright, so 40 frames per second. What do we stabilize at? Oh crap. Oh crap. I cannot ride this. Okay. And man. So high 30s to basically 40s. So on average right now it looks like 37.5 frames per second. So the graphics card is being fully loaded. It's at 98%, 97, 98. And the CPU is only loaded at about 50%. And honestly, on high to very high, I think that looked good enough for me. Like, I don't really notice anything looking that much better on max settings. I think I would rather take the 60 frames per second and slightly lower settings because it was noticeably smoother. I mean, 37 to 40 frames per second right now is not bad at all. But if I had to choose one of the two, I would choose the frames. And I cannot keep up running down the mountain. I love this game. Like, the stupid thing your character does sometimes, like when the physics doesn't allow him to just like walk normally, or like when you run into walls and stuff, it's hilarious. Alright, that is it for the benchmarking. I am going to end it right now. So let's take a look at the build summary. Compared to the budget builds, this computer came in at a whopping $716. That's about 2.5 times the cost of previous budget builds. Most of that went into the CPU, motherboard, and graphics card, which were all a huge step up. We also got more bells and whistles in the form of a nicer case, 16GB of RAM, solid state drive, larger hard drive, and a quality CPU cooler. For something of similar performance and features, you're going to pay around the same amount unless you use some super money saving tactics like price matching or multi-coupon stacking, but those only come around every once in a while, and they weren't available when I was looking, otherwise I would have done that. Alright, that wraps up the video. If you liked it, then you know what to do. If you haven't followed me on Twitter yet, it's at Nerd on a Budget, and I use that to show sneak peeks of what I'm working on typically, and I'll post any really good deals that I come across as well. So my question to you all is, would you rather take a budget build and $450 cash on top of it, or would you take the build that I put together in this video? Let me know in the comment section below. I'm really curious as to which option you guys would pick. But that's about it. I don't think there's any announcements. I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye.